want you to travel back with me. Okay, are you ready? So like we're time traveling back. 1997. Jen and I had been dating for a few months, and we decided to take our first kind of little mini day road trip together. And so I was finishing up my degree up at Western, and so I was living in Bellingham, and that year I shared an apartment with this guy named Blake. And so it was just Blake and I in this tiny little rundown two-bedroom apartment, and he and I were really good friends. And a couple of months into the school year, into the fall, he got pneumonia. In fact, he was so sick that he actually went into the hospital for close to a month. And Blake grew up, and his parents at that time still lived down in Des Moines. Okay, so he was in a hospital down in the Des Moines area. How many of you know where Des Moines is? Okay, good. I'm not talking about Des Moines, Iowa. I'm talking about like Des Moines near us. Kind of in between Seattle and Tacoma area. And so it was a fairly good distance from Bellingham. And so I invited Jen, and we headed off on this adventure to go see my very sick friend in the hospital. And neither of us was very familiar with the Des Moines area. So we needed some good directions to the hospital. And this might be like shocking for you young people. But in 97, there was like no such thing as GPS. Like maybe James Bond had it, but none of the rest of us did. And so in 97, I also didn't have internet. Okay, it existed, but I didn't have it. In fact, I didn't even have, you can get your mind around this, I didn't even have a computer. Okay, like to write papers and stuff when I was finishing up at Western, I had a little piece of technology called a word processor. How many of you even know what that is? Remember a word processor? It was cutting edge technology. And here, the cool thing about it was that it beat the snot out of like a typewriter. So that's how old I am. Okay, 97. There were computers. I didn't have one. There was internet. I wasn't connected, and neither was Jen. So we couldn't just like MapQuest or Google directions. So get this. Here's how we did this. I actually called Blake's mom, okay, like on a landline, for directions, and then I had to write them down by hand. Okay, it was horrible. And thankfully, the directions were very, very simple, Blake's mom said. She said, just take the freeway all the way, just take the freeway all the way from Bellingham, and then find the exit. And she gave us the exit number, and she said, then there were like 2 turns. And so Jen and I were like, oh, this is going to be great. And so we got on I-5 South, and we went on our little adventure. Once we got through Seattle, we started looking for the exit number. And we looked, and we looked, and we looked, and we drove, and we drove, and we drove. And Jen kept saying, hey, shouldn't we have hit the exit by now? And I kept saying, nah, don't worry. We're almost there, I'm sure of it. Eventually, we hit Tacoma. And I said, okay, I think we missed it. So we turned around and we drove north on I-5, looking for the exit. When we hit Seattle again, we were like, dang it. What in the world? I mean, we're sharp people. How did we miss it again? So we looked at each other and we said, you know what? We weren't paying that close of attention the first time. And it's probably one of those things where you can only take the exit if you're on one side of I-5, So let's turn around and we'll see what happens. So we turned around, we headed back in. This time we paid very close attention. We didn't talk. We were glued to no exit. Okay, no exit. And some of you, again, those of you that are under 25, you're probably thinking like, why didn't you just call or text Blake's mom from your cell? Okay, this is an appalling thought. Neither of us had a cell. Okay, this was 97. And so those of you under 25, you should know cell phones did exist back then, but normal people didn't have them. And they weighed like 35 pounds. So Jen and I had to actually get off of I-5 and use a payphone to call Blake's mom. Now, I won't go into all the details, but here's what went wrong. We weren't actually supposed to take I-5 all the way to the exit. We were supposed to, in Linwood, get off onto 405. Okay, so this exit was not on I-5, it was on 405, and unfortunately, Blake's mom forgot to mention that. So we did eventually find the hospital, and we visited Blake, and it was great, and he ended up being fine, but we literally wasted hours and hours driving around, and it would have been extremely frustrating, except that I was in love. And being lost on a road trip with that chick was awesome. So we could have been it could have taken days. It would have been fine with me. Now, I tell you this story because it illustrates something very important. There's an extremely valuable life principle in this story. And this is really profound. Okay, are you ready? You don't seem ready. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay, here's the principle. The road you're on determines where you will end up. Okay, so the path you're on determines your destination. Isn't that brilliant? Okay, it turns out it's not all that profound, but we know this. So, okay, just to belabor the point, if you want to get to Spokane, you can't just get on I-5. If you want to get to Canada, you can't just take I-90. And if you want to get to the exit that Blake's mom is telling you about, you can't just take I-5. The path you're on determines your destination. And this is very simple and very obvious, but it's really important. Okay, your hopes and your dreams do not determine your destination. Your path determines your destination. Okay, so as much as you might sincerely want and intend to get to California, you've packed your sunscreen and your swimming suit and your beach ball, and you've booked a hotel, and you've figured out where all the best beaches are, and you've told all of your friends about the trip, as much as you might sincerely want to get there, as much as it's really your intention to get there, if you're on Highway 520, you ain't going to get there. And you say, well, of course. Thanks for the tip, Captain Obvious. Okay, but here's the thing. As obvious as that is in the world of geography, we can easily forget this principle in all sorts of other arenas of life. The truth is, we're all on multiple pathways all the time, and this principle applies to every one of them. It applies to our finances. Okay, we're all on a financial path. If you're married, it applies to your marriage. You're on a relational path in your marriage, and it's taking you somewhere. If you're a parent, it applies to the way you're raising your kids. If you have kids, you're on a parenting path. It applies to your career. It applies to health, nutrition, and exercise. It applies to our relationship with drugs or alcohol. And as much as we might have hopes and dreams and intentions for all of those different things, it's our path, not our intentions, that will ultimately determine our destination. Now, this seems so obvious that it shouldn't even need to be said, right? But if you listen to people talk and you watch the way they live, for some strange reason, there can be this huge disconnect between where they want to end up and the road that they've chosen. I think you all know what I'm talking about. You're talking to somebody whose life has crashed and burned in some way. Maybe their marriage has blown up. Or maybe they've gotten themselves into financial ruin with just excessive spending. Or they've had serious problems with their kids. Or they've struggled with drugs or alcohol. Or they've just kind of fallen away from God. And they tell you their story. And they're so brokenhearted about where they've ended up. But when you listen to them describe the path that they went down, you find yourself thinking, well, what did you expect? As you listen to their story, they're telling you that their hopes and dreams were somewhere over here, but the path that they took went that way. They chose a path that could only lead them over there. And now they're so brokenhearted, and there's so much pain, and there's so much anguish. And sometimes they're even angry at God, or they're angry at other people, and they blame everyone else. But you look and you think to yourself, well, what did you expect? You're simply dealing with the hard reality of ending up where your path took you. Maybe you're watching somebody in your life these days, somebody that you really care about, and you're watching them choose to go down a path that you know is headed for serious trouble. And maybe they haven't faced the consequences yet, but you know the consequences are coming, and so you're scared to death for them. This morning, I want us to kind of flesh out this principle and this idea by looking at an interesting little story in the Bible. It's a story of an older guy watching a young man choose a path of destruction. And the young man is naive and he's oblivious to what lies ahead. But the older guy is watching this. He's watching this whole thing unfold, and he's saying, okay, to the young guy, he's like, oh man, you don't want to go there. It's not going to take you where you want to go. Don't go down the road that you're on. You got to get on a different road. And this story is found in Proverbs chapter 7, and it's written in sort of poetic language. And so here we go. Proverbs chapter 7, verses 6 to 12. It says, at the window of my house, I looked down through the lattice. I saw among the simple, I noticed among the young men, a youth who had no sense. You ever met a youth who had no sense? He was going down the street near her corner, walking along in the direction of her house. At twilight, as the day was fading, as the dark of night was setting in, then came out a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute and with crafty intent. She is unruly and defiant. Her feet never stay at home. Now in the street, now in the squares, at every corner she lurks. Okay, so this older man is watching out the window of his house. And he sees a young man walking down the street. And we don't know how old this young man is, but let's assume that he's at least north of puberty. And he watches this kid walking toward an evil woman's house. And the sun is starting to go down. And as night sets in, this young guy is naively heading for disaster. So as the kid gets up to the house, this woman comes out. And it says she's dressed like a prostitute. Now, she's not a prostitute, but she's dressed like one. And we're told that she has crafty intent. Okay, she's got evil intentions. And then in verse 11, we're told her feet never stay at home. Okay, in other words, she's married, but she's sleeping around everywhere. Her feet never stay at home. She's been around the block. She's deceptively wicked. She's like a black widow, baby. And this unsuspecting guy is her next prey. So she comes out of the house, verses 13 to 14. And it's getting a little bit explicit. And for some of our younger folks, I apologize. But here's what it says. It's just reading scripture. She took a hold of him and kissed him with a brazen face. She said, get this, today I fulfilled my vows. And I have food from my fellowship offering at home. Okay, so she comes out of the house and she grabs this guy and she starts macking on him. And then she says, today I fulfilled my vows and I have fellowship offerings at home. And we're like, what a weird thing to say when you're making out. And so this requires a little bit of translation. Here's what she's saying. She's saying, just so you know, okay, just so we're clear, I'm not a prostitute. I have plenty of money. I have all kinds of offerings for God stored up. I'm rich. Okay, I'm not after your money. I'm after you. And she says, today I have fulfilled my vows. In other words, okay, earlier today I went to the temple with my fellowship offerings. And I got everything squared away with God. I took my big bucket of sins and I dumped them out on the altar. And now I have an empty sin bucket and I want to fill it up with you. Wow. Next verse. She repeats something 3 times for emphasis. Verse 15. So I came out to meet you. I looked for you. I have found you. And he's thinking like, dude, she came out here looking for me. Did you hear that, other dudes? She's totally into me. He's like, who is your daddy? And then she says this, verses 16 to 18. She says, again, pretty graphic, I have covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let's drink deeply of love till morning. Let's enjoy ourselves with love. Okay, in other words, this is no accident. Okay, I've been preparing for you. I've been anticipating your arrival, and this is going to be hot. I'm ready for you. Okay, verse 19. She says, my husband is not at home. And he's going, well, I was kind of assuming that. Thanks for clearing that up. My husband is not at home. He's gone on a long journey. In other words, he's not going to be back for days. I mean, get this, you're not going to have to rush out in the morning. You can hang around, have a couple of cigarettes, we can have breakfast. Verse 20. My husband is not at home. He's gone on a long journey. She says, he took his purse. And that kind of throws you, Maybe that's why we're having this marital issue. I'm just kidding. He took his man bag. And if you have a man bag, that's a good thing. Verse 20. He took his purse filled with money and will not be home till full moon. So she says he's going to be gone for days. Saying to this young kid, we have all the time in the world. Now, the young guy has a song in his head. He's experiencing all this, and it's like the hallelujah chorus is like, whoo. The older guy, he's watching this, and he's got a song in his head too. It's like the theme song from Jaws. Now, this whole story is told from the perspective of the older guy, and he tells us how this story turns out. Now, listen to this. This is where it gets crazy. Verses 21 to 27. Describing it, he says, with persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once, he followed her like an ox to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose till an arrow pierces his liver. Like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Many are the victims she has brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death. Now, how exactly did this encounter lead to death? Well, over in the book of Second Hesitations, we find out that this woman's husband was the head of the Israeli mafia. And when he found out about the affair, his mafia guys came and took this young guy to a remote area, and they had him whacked. Not at all. I just made that up. There's no book of Second Hesitations. And we have no idea how this encounter led to death. And I think it's because that's not really the point. In fact, this story isn't even based on any real situation. It's a hypothetical scenario. It's a parable. It's a fictional story with a very real point. And there's more to it than just don't mess with hot, evil married women. There's a broader message. And the message is this. If we're not wise, if we're naive, if we don't pay attention, we can go down roads that lead to pain and misery. And the truth is, we're all on paths in our lives that are leading somewhere. Our path determines where we will end up. So you can say what you want for certain things in your life, but if you're not on the right path, you're never going to get there. And for some reason, we can be really confused about this. We can buy into this really ridiculous lie that our intentions are actually the same thing as our path. Like, as long as we have good intentions, we're going to end up in good places. Let me give you a few examples. How about this one? How about the single girl that's trying to follow Jesus? Single girl's trying to follow Jesus, and she says, I want to end up with a great Christian guy that loves God and serves people and is really growing in his faith. I want to have a relationship with that guy where we can celebrate the goodness of God together. I want to serve in ministry together. I want to get married and raise our kids and teach them to love God. I want to spend our life together, challenging each other and encouraging each other to be the people that God dreams of us becoming. I want to share my life with a man where we can go do missions stuff and have these incredible experiences together and see incredible things. So, I'm just going to go out with any guy that asks me as long as he's cute and funny. Or how about the married guy with small kids that says, I want our family to be a strong little unit. I want us to be a family that knows each other's dreams and hurts and really shares in life together. So I'm going to work 70 hours a week, and I'm going to derive all of my identity by how successful I am in my career, and I'm going to become a workaholic. But that's okay, because my intention is to have this beautiful, close, intimate little family. Or how about the person that says, I really love my spouse, and I want to grow old together. I want to continue developing an intimate friendship that will last a lifetime. So I'm going to keep going out to lunch with that person at work that I'm attracted to. I'm going to work together with them as often as possible. I'm going to make up reasons to stop by their workstation. I'm going to start talking to them about really intimate things in my life, even some of the struggles that I'm having in my marriage. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Because I really do intend to stay faithful to my spouse. These are all paths that are leading somewhere. We think that it's our intentions that matter. How about this one? I want to grow to be more like Jesus. I know godly people that seem so peaceful, and even amidst really hard things in their lives. I know godly people that seem to have incredible wisdom when it comes to relating to other people. I know godly people that seem to have found this uncanny ability to forgive and encourage and challenge people. And I want to be like that. I want to be filled with godliness. So I'm going to carve out all kinds of time for exercising and watching TV and playing video games and stalking people on Facebook. But I'm hardly ever going to engage in things that challenge me spiritually. I'm going to structure my life and my schedule so that I'm really hit and miss at church. And I'm going to gather, I'm not going to gather very often with other believers in any sort of meaningful way or read Christian books or do the things that would help me grow. Okay, but that's all okay because my intention is to grow in my walk with God. Okay, one more. How about this one? I want to be a person that's generous to those that have financial needs. I want to be able to help people that are in crisis. I want to be able to buy things for the people that I love. I want to be able to support causes where people are suffering, places like Haiti, like Africa. But I'm not going to budget and come up with a plan for spending and saving and giving. I'm just going to bury my head in the sand when it comes to my finances so that I always end up somehow spending a little more than I make. But it doesn't matter that I have no financial margin, no ability to be generous, that I'm in debt up to my ears, because my intention is to be generous. My intention is to help people. I mean, can I just say, like, having good intentions is good, okay? I think we'd all agree it's a lot better than having evil intentions. But the truth is, our path trumps our intentions every single time. So I want you to stop and think about some critical pathways in your life. And if you keep going the direction you're going, where are you going to end up? Like, where is your marriage heading? For those of you that are married, where is your marriage heading? Where are things heading with your kids? Where are you heading spiritually? How about your health? Where is the road that you're on taking you in those kind of arenas? And before I move on, I just want to be clear about something. What I'm talking about today is far more than just, okay, make sure you have clear goals for your life and that you're really doing what it takes to achieve those goals. What I'm describing here is not a self-management project. Because maybe you're here this morning and you know that you're headed for trouble in some area. Like maybe you knew it full well right when you walked in here this morning. There's some area of your life where things are off track. You know it, you just don't know what to do about it. You're aware of the problem, you just don't know how to fix it. And maybe there's a part of you that says, you know what, I know I need to go a new direction, okay? I just don't think I have what it takes to go a new direction. I don't think I have the strength or the commitment. Or to be honest, I'm not even sure I know what I need to do differently. Like I know that what I'm doing isn't working, but I don't even know what to change. Okay, what I'm talking about today is so much more than set goals and then do what it takes to achieve them. Because here's the reality. You may have noticed, life is hard. And answers are not simple to the bigger challenges. Parenting, marriage, career, substance issues. Answers aren't simple. And so here's the beauty of walking with God. Okay? You are not alone in this thing. I mean, I want you to think really hard about a beautiful reality for a second. Did you know that God cares about your marriage more than you do? Did you know that He cares about your relationship with your kids? Like more about helping them become people of character than you do? He cares more about how you manage money than you do. He cares who you might end up marrying, those of you that are single. He really cares about that. He cares about your spiritual growth. And He's not just leaving you on your own to fend for yourself. God isn't just looking at you and saying, hey, get it together, man. God is watching all that you're dealing with, and He knows all that you're dealing with. When there's turmoil in your heart, He knows it. He cares about it. He sees it. And God is watching all that you're dealing with, and He's saying to you, hey, look, let's do this thing together, you and me. Let's work on your finances and your marriage and the problem that you have with that friend of yours. Let's work on how you go about dating and find that special person. Let's work on that struggle that you're having in the office. Let's figure out a new way to help your kids become great human beings. Okay, you're not alone. I'm with you. I care about you. I care about where you're going. I care about your destinations. And so lean on me. Lean into me and let me help you. There's a beautiful story about King Solomon in the Old Testament. And this is the same King Solomon who wrote most of the book of Proverbs. And so the story that we just looked at of the young man being seduced was probably written by Solomon. But when Solomon took over as king of Israel, he was in way over his head. And he knew it. Okay, he was inexperienced, he was naive, he was young, and he felt totally inadequate for this responsibility that he now had. So, and by the way, what we're going to get to here is a true story. It's not a parable. But God comes to him, and He meets him in his time of weakness. And God says to him, Solomon, what do you want me to do for you? Now, that's a pretty big question, don't you think? God comes. I mean, what if God came to you right now in your life, right now, in this season of your life, with all that you're dealing with, and He said, what do you want me to do for you? How would you answer that? Well, here's what Solomon said to God. This is 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 7 to 9. It says, now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David. But I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours? Solomon says, God, let's just be honest. I am in way over my head. Okay, I'm not qualified for this. And this is a job that really matters. So please give me the wisdom that I need to lead this nation. Give me discernment to know what to do. Okay, now check out God's response. This is verses 10 to 13. It says, the Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, since you have asked for this, and not for a long life or wealth for yourself, nor have asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. Now here's the point. Solomon was in way over his head, and he knew it. And he cried out to God, God, help me. And it pleased God. It was a prayer that God couldn't wait to answer. And he gave Solomon incredible wisdom. And the kingdom of Israel thrived under his leadership. Okay, the kingdom of Israel in that period was the strongest nation in the world. It was the superpower. It was the high point in the history of that nation. Like when Jesus came along 1,000 years later, the people of Israel were still longing for the days of Solomon. That was their dream. Like a kingdom that had enough economic strength, a kingdom that was governed by justice, where the poor and the weak were cared for, a kingdom where God was honored, okay, like it was in the days of King Solomon. All of this from a guy that was in way over his head. And he knew it. Okay, now back to you. Are you in over your head in some arena of your life? Because here's a very simple but very important question. Are you crying out to God to help you? Like, are you really? Or are you sort of on the self-management plan? I know for me, far too often in my life, I've been on the self-management plan. Or I don't know what else to do, so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing plan. And I wish I could say, you know what, I always go to God with everything. Okay, I don't. Okay, not by a long shot. I'm absolutely not that spiritual yet. I hope to be one day. But there are a few times that I have cried out and God has met me. And I wanted to just share a couple of those with you. When Jen and I first got married, in the first year, maybe 2 years, it was a tough go. I mean, we just had a really hard time connecting. I found that she was angry a lot, and that made me mad that she was angry, because I don't know how you could be angry at me. If you haven't noticed, I am awesome. But there was this frustration and this tension all the time, and I was like, I don't know where this is coming from, and I don't know what to do about it. I'm being as awesome as I know how to be, and it's just not working. And I remember I was like night after night after night, I would go to bed, and I would go to bed alone because there was tension, and I would lay in bed and go, God, help me, because I don't know what to do here. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make it better. And I know this is not what you want for us. I know it's not. And I can't explain what happened. I know that I started to realize some things, and Jen started to realize some things, and we started to figure some stuff out, and I felt like God was right there in the midst of that. And I can tell you that after a few years, we were in a very different spot. And I will tell you that there is no other person that I would rather spend time with today than her. I love you guys, but she takes it. God did a work there. Another issue for me was my first couple of years being a Christian. I didn't grow up a Christian. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. First couple of years, I just was like pelted with doubts all the time. Like there's things about this that I really like, but there's so much of it that's hard to believe. And just like, is this true? Is it real? And it would just drive me absolutely nuts. But one of the things that happened for me is that once I got to the realization that maybe this is plausible, I started saying, God, if you're real, if this is real, help me. I kind of believe, but I don't fully believe, but I want to fully believe because I think this is a really beautiful thing, and I kind of think it's real, but sometimes I don't, and I don't know what to, God, help me. And again, I can't really explain what happened, but over the next couple of years, there were different people in my life who helped me find different resources that I was able to read, and all of a sudden, 2-3 years later, I was in a very, very different spot in my faith. But there was this constant, God, help me with this. God, help me with this. And I think about it now and I go, what if God hadn't come alongside me in those areas? What if I'd just gone with a self-management plan and failed? Like, where would I be? Where would my life be? What would I be doing? Where would my marriage be? What would my relationship with my kids be? And this is why it matters so much. Okay, your path, not your intentions, leads to your destination. And so is there some arena of your life where if you just keep going the direction you're going to end up somewhere you really don't want to be? And think hard about it, because the stakes are high on this. And maybe if you know things are off track, and you feel like I'm in way over my head, I just want to encourage you, like, are you asking God for wisdom? Like, really crying out? And if not, why not? Like, what would be stopping you? Because what if God is just waiting to meet you? And he can show you the way to get on another path that will lead you to beautiful places. God, I thank you so much for loving us, for never giving up on us. I thank you for the reality that even though all of us have had so many different things in our lives that we wish we could go back and do over, there's grace, there's forgiveness, and there's patience, and there's you waiting and saying, I'm here. And I want to help you. Look to me. And so, God, I pray that this morning, for any of us who recognize there's stuff happening in our marriage or with our kids or at work or with friends or with different habits in our lives, where we're heading a direction we don't want to go. We're heading to a destination we don't want to be. God, I pray that you would help us. I pray that you would help us to be honest with ourselves about the reality of it, and you would help us figure out how to move along differently. That we would cry out to you, that we would connect to you, that we would listen to you, and that you would bring us to a different place. We love you. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.